We are on live stream now. We are on live stream. Okay, we are on live stream now. You are on live.
Cuando tú me digas.
Right now. Right now.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos a este programa especial Uhuru África en conmemoración con Día Internacional que conmemoramos el aniversario de la fundación del Partido de los Panteras Negras de España en el año 1988. Justo un día como hoy fue cuando esto dio lugar. Y para ello vamos a hablar hoy del hip hop, del rap, de la música, del impacto que ha tenido en el movimiento revolucionario negro, en la creación de la conciencia en España, la vinculación con la obra de Malcolm X y tantos otros líderes políticos como Mumia Abu-Jamal, como Winnie Mandela, Angela Davis, bueno, un montón de gente que han sido importantísimos en la conciencia política negra. Hoy hablamos the influence of hip hop and influence of the most important and influence group in the history of hip hop, Public Enemy. And this is Abuy Nfubea. I'm your host. I'm here today. We talk in this special program. We have a lot of people to write us from everywhere. We have people from Texas, Equatorial Guinea, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela. We have people in Gabon, Malabo, Senegal, and in Spain and in the US. We have friends in the US who will talk today about Public Enemy, the most influential hip-hop group in the history. And today to talk on Public Enemy, we have a different DJs and different MCs in this house. We have Sister Nkechi Taifa, one of the great DJs in the history of fighting for reparation. And she's a lawyer, and she's based in Washington, D.C. She's one of the long member of the Republic of New Africa and writer too. So we have with us Dr. Akinyele Umoja, who is member of the NAPO, New African People Organization, the founding member of the Malcolm X Grassroots movement, is a writer too, and professor of the Georgia State University. And we have another brothers like Kalonji, who will be with us, and Sister Rukia from Jackson, Mississippi. And we have in the techniques in Argentina, and my sister Cecilia. Cecilia is one of the sisters who are a member of the Agrupación Pan-Africana de Argentina, who's one of the techniques in all this show today. So everybody, welcome to the Terradome, Public Enemy. Now we will start with Brother Akinyele. Brother Akinyele, and I want to ask you, what is the impact? What is the impact of hip hop in the history of the Black liberation?
Man, okay, that's a big question. I think even beyond hip hop, our music has been an important foundation for driving our consciousness and the resistance of our people. And this goes back to our ancestors when they first come here. The music is one of the things that inspires them. They also use music to code message, when they were trying to conceal stuff from the oppressors. So hip hop carries that same tradition. It kind of reflects the resistance of our people. Hip hop kind of sprung up as a different art form from the streets of the Bronx, New York, and Brooklyn, New York, and other communities in New York, coming from our youth, and kind of expressing that, and particularly since it had spoken word along with it at a particular moment. And I think Public Enemy best captures that moment when our youth are rising up. And this is in the late 80s, when there begins to be a reemergence of a Black consciousness movement amongst our people. We've talked about, and this is the month of August, Black August. We talk about the repression that's come against our people from the movement of the 60s and 70s. And so, but there was a re-emergence, and a lot of us don't talk about it. We think things go from Martin Luther King to Black Lives Matter. But in between that time, and Sister Nkechi and I know because we were involved in that movement, there's a movement that kind of reemerges on the streets to challenge, white supremacy and assert our right to self-determination. And so Public Enemy kind of reflects that consciousness emerging at that particular point. They are very important insofar as to me, their music and the popularity of their music, not only in the United States, but worldwide, as you pointed out, but they kind of represent the defeat in some instances of COINTELPRO, because one of the objectives of COINTELPRO, and if your audience don't know what that means, COINTELPRO was a campaign, a war, actually part of the war against our people during the 1960s. And Nkechi could give you a lot more defined definition than I just gave you. But part of that war, and when it was outlined by the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, one thing was to keep the youth separate from the Black Power movement, separate from the Black nationalist movement. But Public Enemy represents that was defeated. The youth, in some ways, embraced the ideas of Black Power. Brother Boy, you were a young guy during that time, but you remember in the United States, young people start wearing medallions, leather with Africa on it, very similar to a symbol for TV. People began to wear hats with X on it, representing Malcolm X. And Public Enemy is a big part of the reflection of the consciousness of the youth, but also they had an impact in spreading and sharing that type of culture amongst our young people. I actually became aware of Public Enemy because I was teaching high school at the time. And my students would come to me and like, Umoja, listen to this. Check this out. And they were very much inspired by that. So they taught me, and in turn, I shared it with even more students, right? Them talking about things, having messages or sampling Malcolm X in their messages, sampling Minister Louis Farrakhan in their messages, making mention of Asada Shakur, even though it was through her slave name, Joanne Chesimard. But just by them saying that, I could say in the classroom, do y'all know what they meant when they said coming hard like Chesimard? You know what I mean? So I could take that, and then I could begin to share that with other youth. So Public Enemy, I think, and they're just one example, but they're like in the vanguard, right? Because of course you have Boogie Down Productions. Later on, you have the X-Clan movement that's connected to under the mentorship of Baba Sonny Carson. You know what I mean? So, and they're actually active on the street. They weren't just rappers. They were actually organizing on the streets of Brooklyn. So you know, it was very important movement at that time, and it got to the point because they have this intervention in commercial radio that they had, they're played somewhat, but it got to the point that it became so popular that even rappers who weren't traditionally thought of as conscious, everybody had at least one message song on their album. Rappers like Too Short, who was known to basically be misogynist,
don't believe in the hype
and stuff.
Too Short
had at least one conscious song on his albums during that time. And so I think they impacted the industry. Later on, though, I think there will be a reverse attack, and we'll talk about that later. That kind of comes around the period of Tupac and others, where they began to suppress some of the musical messages because they realized that this is having an impact on our consciousness. And just like today, where there are discussions about they have this discussion in the United States coming from the right about attacking what they call critical race theory. They want to get rid of any revolutionary thought, any black consciousness out of the curriculums in the schools. And so at that time, they wanted to get it out of the music. Anything that talked about our resistance, and particularly in resistance against the police on the streets. So, I talked to a long while. Akishi probably
so
said,
that is you went inside. You went inside. We go with Sister Nkechi Taifa. I remember what Akinyele said, because one of the great group in that time was MPMD, and MPMD then who was Africa Islam. You as Paris.
Yeah.
Paris was very conscious. It was very, very politicized. I mean, one of the issues that we got to talk with the Sister Nkechi Taifa and others is the question of the clip. The clip became to play a major role in the music.
The what? When
the clip of the video, the clip.
That,
yeah. When Michael Jackson made "Remember the Time,"
right.
that is what what's they call Bolefia Sante called Afrocentrism.
Right.
No, remember the time.
Right.
Because because that clip make people know too much about all this question of the black history in the past. Use a basketball player like Magic Johnson.
Right.
Use people like this.
Eddie Murphy, I think, was in that video.
Eddie Murphy. Yes.
Right.
So when Public Enemy come with videos like the video, I got some problem in my mind, refuse to lose.
Right.
That video, you remember that video when he is in the prison system in the United States. So
right.
the videos, those videos talk about the question of Sister Nkechi Taifa involved in the question of reparation. Sister Nkechi Taifa, my question is this. What's this hip hop in general and Public Enemy in particular bring or broke this kind of a meaning of a black struggle in terms of reparation, in terms of many other things that is different than what's happening in the 60s with your best friend James Brown? I'm sorry.
Say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud. So it's just a continuum. It's a continuum from the music of the 60s and 70s where we branched into what we call the golden age of hip hop. It didn't just drop out of the sky. It was a continuum from James Brown. It was a continuum from the Last Poets. It was a continuum from Jill Scott Heron. It was a continuum from Sonia Sanchez and Nikki Giovanni. It was the most logical continuum, I guess you could say, as the generations moved on. It was anti-establishist movement. It was in your face, type of lyrics. And like you said, it had something that the other generations didn't have because of the advance of technology. It had the video. When that 1991 video of Rodney King, being beat. I mean, I'm just saying, it was the times that was going on and that was happening. It was reflected in the movement. It was an anti-police because of what the police was doing in the black community. FUCK. I still can't say, the police. Okay, because it was just showing, from the black experience what was going on and what was happening. The lyrics were infused with social justice issues. There is a poem I did way back in the day called "While Malcolm Preached, Train Played." I talked about that when the music was strong, the people were strong. When the people were strong, the music was strong, and the people would not go wrong. I mean, so this predated hip hop. You know what I'm saying? But the music would follow what was happening in the streets, in the community, and that is what the epitome of what was going on with Public Enemy. When "Fight the Power" became the theme song of Spike Lee's "Do the Right Thing," I mean, it was a game changer. You know what I mean? It's the fusion of all of these things, together. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back.
Yeah, hold us back.
Power.
Radio Rahim. Radio Rahim.
You know what I'm saying? So just like what Professor Dr. Akinyele was saying about the COINTELPRO, its final point was to stop the long-range growth of militant Black organizations, especially amongst the youth. Okay, and so that's why when we have the proliferation of the youth rebelling against those tactics of the U.S. government, talk about drug abuse for public enemy number one. I mean, they went and took that around and said, okay, yeah, well, we public enemy. And what y'all going to do about it? I mean, you know what I mean? So it was strong. It is strong because, I had law students coming up to me doing papers on what was going on and what was happening in the comparison between the COINTELPRO of the 60s and 70s and the onslaught, the governmental onslaught against these new rappers that were coming up in the 80s and in the 90s. So, I just want to say political and social commentary was really infused within the music, within the raps, songs of the hip hop generation, the golden age of hip hop. And I see our brother here has joined us, so he can speak much more eloquently on all of this than myself. But the last thing I would say is that it has spread across the world, across the globe. This was not just a New York or Atlanta or West Coast, East Coast, whatever. This came a worldwide, a global movement, and it's the music that helped to spearhead that.
Bueno, estamos en
one point that
go ahead.
Follow up with what Akishi said is when the rebellions happened in '92 after Rodney King. But after the verdict, I should say, in the Rodney King case, I noticed that our enemies made note of what was some of the graffiti on the walls. Fight the power was some of that. F the police. So things straight out of hip hop lyrics. The
message coming from
part of the language of resistance of the masses of our people. You know what I mean? So. That scared the hell out of our enemies, and in turn, they assaulted hip hop. And so that's something to note in terms of the impact, but also that they weren't seen by our enemies as just something that they didn't have to worry about. It reflected that consciousness and resistance of our people, and particularly the youth.
And we have in this discussion, we have Kalonji Changa, FTP Movement co-founder of the Black Power Media. I'm very happy with this brother here because this morning I was in his show and we was talking about many of questions that the brother will gonna introduce right now, because in this question of Brother Akinyele and Sister Nkechi Taifa talk about the question of the chains and from African medallia. This is very this is something that happened here in Spain. I remember one brother is coming to me, say he went to join to the Black Panther Party in Spain and nobody left him go. He has the money to pay. He didn't say no, nobody want to take his money. And when I see my brother, I said, my brother, what's happened with this brother? What's he do? He said, the brother don't have no public enemy records. How he can be here? And the brother was listening to Michael Jackson, The brother didn't know nothing about all these groups coming, And the brother was a good guy. I know him, the brother, a long time. He said, but I know this brother is a good guy. He said, but he don't know nothing about public enemy. He must to get medallia, maybe. So that's all the time when the people begin to get this medallia, walking in the street with Africans, those conscience was very global. And the question that we're going to go now is, in my book, Malcolm X and the Hip Hop Generation, I have 2 chapters. I talk about how the rappers, hip hop, reinvented Malcolm X in 90s, in 80s, because it was there. Even Wu-Tang Clan have a song on Malcolm X, and the Wu-Tang Clan is not the most important conscience group, but they have a song on Malcolm X. So that was something that we must talk. I want to go with Brother Kalonji. What is the impact hip hop in Public Enemy brought in that time, in the Rodney King area, in context of to the conscience of the Black Revolution, of Black freedom, or any words they using to talk about that?
All right. First off, thank you for having me on. I'm late. I did 2 shows this morning. I'm like Baba AK. You know what I mean? So this is my 3rd show.
And she's done 3 more than we have.
I already know. Yeah. As soon as I came on talking about something, this brother right here, and I'm like, I already know she already laid it out. So I don't even know why she trying to do me like that. But man, you know, it's funny because I had this the same argument with some of my intellectual brothers, right? We talked about the impact of because they were kind of throwing the whole Spike Lee movie out the window, and yes, the Spike Lee Malcolm X joint, and my assessment would be that it was because of that movie, although it wasn't correct in the eyes of the quote unquote freedom fighters, it was a way for us to politicize the masses, right? Yeah. Same as hip hop. You know, so when you're an organizer, you have to take what you can get and use it as a tool, because they say a wise man utilize all tools. We want everything to be packaged. We want everything to be right. This brother's not wearing his daishiki properly. You know, he got a Asian daishiki on. This one is putting up the wrong fist, so on and so forth. Use that as a political learning experience, right? Use it as a moment to politicize the masses. And that's how you win them over, not by browbeating them. So hip hop, and I spoke earlier today. A few years ago, I had a convo with the hip hop group Damn from Palestine, right? And they said that they learned English from listening to Tupac records, and that's how they got into revolutionary hip hop, through listening to pop. Now, those of us who knew Pac in the past, I know AK, you know what I'm saying, and possibly Mama as well. You know, you might not always have agreed with Pac, right? But the reality is, he had that revolutionary fervor and that impact that was able to affect folks across the globe. Just like when you talk about Public Enemy, no one can deny Public Enemy's impact. You know what I'm saying? Now, you might not, you know, you have the individuals you may like or dislike, so on and so forth, but they brought something to the table that that really helped to, not only on an international level, but the brothers and sisters in the hood. I can recall back in the day, I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm 45 minutes away from Harlem. I can remember the brothers who was, you know, selling crack, selling dope. They're riding down the street with their rims and everything, but they're bumping Public Enemy. Public Enemy #1. Matter of fact, my brother, who was apolitical, he's who I learned, my younger brother, I learned about Public Enemy through him. We shared a room, and he would be blasting this damn Public Enemy tape all the time, and I'd be like, man, turn that off, it's whack, like, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? This is like, it was the first one. I couldn't stand it. But then one day he said, man, you be talking all that black stuff, you don't even listen. So I stopped and I listened to what they were saying. I'm like, oh man, this is cold. You know what I'm saying? And I realized at that particular moment that hip hop, as it always has been, it was designed to be about feeling good and partying and all that, but at the same time it was a tool for liberation. And it can still be used as a tool for liberation. We just have to be in control of that tool. But as we know, once capitalism seeps in and it morphs it into whatever they want it to be, then it becomes a whole nother situation.
Yes. The question is this: the people that we meet Malcolm X, we meet the people. It was through hip hop, not only hip hop. It was the rock music they call in Spain rock radical vasco. It was music, Basque music of rock. It was making sampler for Malcolm X, and we didn't understand why they do that, because there was the impact of Malcolm X through hip hop. like when the Take a Nation, a Million Hollows Back is this record of Public Enemy, but the Fear of a Black Planet too. They have a sample from Malcolm X and other records that they broke the, because sometime here in Spain people was confusing black movement with Public Enemy. So every time you know, white people want to talk about black revolution, they want to put Public Enemy. You know, they put Public Enemy, and people tell them, no, they are not activists, they are musicians. But that's kind of a capacity to bring black conscience in terms of commercial too, because Public Enemy sell many records. They sell many records, they win awards, but at the same time they keep revolution. You know, it's not very easy to do that. Akinyele, how this happened? How this happening? What's happening in this context?
And if I understand you correctly, you're saying, how did it happen? They're selling all these records, but at the same time, they're promoting a revolutionary message. If you look at it, and if I understand it correctly, they were under Def Jam Records, you know, Russell Simmons.
Yes.
And Russell Simmons, he hears them. And at the same time, I believe, as we talk about, there's a growing consciousness amongst our youth. The first album, I believe, was Joe Bum Rush the Show. That might have been the one Kalonji's brother was playing.
Definitely was.
And that was the first one my students introduced me to too, when I was teaching high school. And even though it wasn't as revolutionary as it takes a nation of millions to hold you back, there was something street about it. It kind of represented the energy coming from the streets. And so I think a lot of people related to it on that basis. But then when they came out with A Nation of Millions, it was more hard. And again, that was introduced to me by some of the young people who are part of our organization here in Atlanta, really coming out of LA. But hearing that, I was like, damn, what the hell? You know, they quoting Farrakhan, they quoting Malcolm, they're making reference to Farrakhan. They're talking about people liberating themselves from the prison. And again, there was a market for that, obviously, because again, a lot of our young people relating to it. And again, I think at first capitalism tries to take advantage of it because it is selling records. But again, at a certain point, they said, wait a minute. Number one, our kids are listening to this. Number two, is making Black youth, again, more militant. And it's kind of reflecting. I think it's a back and forth that takes place between where people's heads are at in the street, what people are doing in the street, and the music. And the music is kind of feeding and helping to build that. At a certain point, I think it becomes more of a threat. So I think it's a decision, okay, we got to keep a better control of this. And we can't get it. And that's why I think Kalonji is saying, if it's going to be ultimately be a tool for our liberation, we got to control it. I mean, and we do have some vehicles to control things ourselves in terms of technology, but you know, it's always going to be that battle because capitalism's not trying to. I remember this quote my elders told me from W.B. Du Bois: "The system that enslaves you cannot free." And it's kind of like they're not going to give us the tools to overthrow them. They might give us the tools to use us for them to use us better, but not for us to take power from them. And so, you know, so I kind of see it in that context. But they'll try to sell and take advantage of anything they can. You know what I mean? So if Public Enemy, if they think they can sell a radical message to a certain degree and have control, they'll let you get so far. You know what I mean? But the question is, can we have control of our own voices, messages, and say things that's in our own best interests. And so I think that's what that dilemma represents for them and for us. You know what I mean? It ain't just a one-sided problem. It's an issue for both of us.
I'm sorry.
So
Go ahead, sister.
Yeah. At one time, Chuck D called rap the Black CNN.
Right.
Okay, and he did that because it was reflecting what was happening on the streets, what was happening in the community. And during this time, almost every year there was a crime bill popping up, and there were police stuff going on, and all of this stuff culminating in what I call the granddaddy of all the crime bills, the crime bill of 1994, the large expansion of the federal death penalty in modern times, the federalization of the 3 strikes, the trying of 13-year-olds as adults, 100,000 new cops on the street. All of this stuff is happening during this time. We didn't have a lot of video. Rodney King was really the first time when something like that was captured on video, and rap, hip hop was all in the midst of all of that. And I think, going back to your question to Baba AK, I don't know if they, at that time, if the powers that be really saw the threat that hip hop was going to be. They saw it eventually, and that's why they sought to co-opt it, and hip hop morphed into some other stuff, more of a downplay on the political, revolutionary, cultural messages to more so of gangster rap and, just overblow of it, shall I say. But there always was attacks on law enforcement, because that was like the preeminent issue that was happening out there on the streets with respect to young people. But I really think that their tactic that we talked about earlier of the COINTELPRO to stop the long-range growth of militant Black nationalist organizations, especially amongst the youth. And I think they said, we see this growing phenomena with rap, with hip hop, and we need to stop it. We need to downplay it. We need to financially uplift other modes to take folks' minds away off from the revolution.
That's why the NBA stopped hip hop in the show. When they play NBA, I remember when NBA player it was some 2 or 3 NBA players was rappers. One of them was Shaquille O'Neal, and the NBA stopped putting more hip hop music in this during the match. They said that hip hop music don't go more. But you remember what Caesar said? What's going on? What's happened with Ice-T when he went fuck the police? It was Ice-T the first. Ice-T and the Syndicate.
His song "Cop Killer." It was
Cop Killer. It was fuck the police was NWA. NWA was
that's after police. Yeah.
And then Ice-T was playing the police on TV
all the time. Pimping police.
You know what I want to say before I give my brother Kalonji the mic. That's why I say, I told my wife that look, Ice-T and the other guy is LL Cool J. It was my heroes. But look them now in the TV. Killing niggas. So I said, because LL Cool J, it was for me was the greatest rappers, when he made I Need Love, all these songs, But now when you see LL Cool J making cop in TV every day, I have many contradictions with this kind of films. I prefer don't see them. I prefer to keep him in my head like I know him, So go ahead, bro, Kalonji, you want to.
Definitely Ice-T made a career off of playing cops and pimps. That's been his whole thing. And LL with that song he had out, Accidental Racist, with the white boy Brad Paisley, where he was talking about forgiving him of his Confederate flag if they forgave him for his gold chains and his do-rag and all that crazy stuff. So,
I never heard that. I'm glad I missed that.
Yeah, I'm glad you missed it. Trust me. I hate that I had to hear it. But one thing about Public Enemy that Baba AK mentioned, Russell Simmons. A lot of people don't know that Russell's father, Reverend Daniel Simmons, was actually a comrade of Baba Herman Ferguson. They organized the
I did not know that.
Me neither.
They organized.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I figured y'all didn't. I throw y'all a little something to show y'all still know something. But yeah, they organized around education and housing, I believe, in Queens, New York.
Right.
Matter of fact, when Baba AK made his transition, I messaged
Baba Herman.
I'm sorry. like, get it right, Baba Herman. Weird. Sorry about that, Baba. When Baba Herman made his transition, I actually messaged Daniel Simmons, his son, their brother, to let him know, because he was talking about how they were good friends. We'd had that talk before, so that's how I actually found out about it, through Russell and Run's brother, who's a artist himself, a visual artist, painter. But yeah, I forgot your question, man. I got kind of thrown off real quick.
You're sending Baba AK to his early demise.
Yeah, I'm saying that. I'm about to get jumped when I step out the house. Yeah, but yeah, hip hop is definitely it's like anything else. When you deal with capitalism, the goal of capitalism is to be able to make it look like whatever you want it to be. You know what I'm saying? Whatever's fashionable, that's what they'll introduce to you. You know what I'm saying? If it's if you're talking about Black Lives Matter, you'll see a bunch of Black Lives Matter commercials. If you're talking about the Me Too movement, you'll see a bunch of Black Girl Magic commercials. If you're talking about the LGBT community, you'll see a bunch of this stuff. So this is all to further drive propaganda into your heads, to your minds and your soul, and to fool you into thinking that you've advanced. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like another form of reform, right? We know that capitalism is a very violent system. You know what I'm saying? It's violent from its beginnings, and then to be violent in its end. It's a system of exploitation. Unfortunately, a lot of these artists lack politics. And we think because an artist speaking some positive stuff that we that they're on the right side of the barricades. Oftentimes they might just they might have read a book, they might have spoke to someone, but that political education, it falls short. So we have to be able to turn our back to the industry. And when you talk about cooptation, you look at Public Enemy itself, you look at the divide and conquer between Griff and the group, and also Flavor Flav. I mean, Flavor Flav was the ultimate. He was one of the people who ushered in this whole reality TV stuff. You know what I'm saying? With the whole Flavor Love thing. They did all types of offshoots based on that. And they wanted to get someone like Flavor because Flavor was automatically considered the weak link of the group. But at the same time, he was thought of as a buffoon, a caricature. And it was a way to further drive Public Enemy into oblivion. But luckily, they were able to survive that. And, I tell folks all the time, man, there's Flavor Flavs within all the organizations. We just have to be able to keep them at bay and make sure that we're handling that business.
I think it was a Malcolm X said that if you have a black coffee, you need to put some milk. You know what I mean? Because Flavor have too much milk. But this question of Kalonji talk about the Professor Griff. Professor Griff is my personal friends. We make friends here in Spain in 1992. We keep the friendship until we went to the Public Enemy tour in Holland in 1999. And all this question was always because I think it's the same thing happened with Peter Tosh and Bob Marley. Understand? If Peter Tosh was so radical. So in Bob Marley was associated with ganja. I think so. This discussion inside the public enemy is a reflection, as Kalonji said, of what's happening in the community, in the political aspect of the Black people, because this is very because this put in the hand of Jack all the messages of the group, and it's not real, because revolution is not made by one people. It's collective. It's process. It's socials. And when you see what's the prominent flavor became in a group in X1W and in Griff, haven't lost the protagonism they has, this kind of reality that now is normal. But in that time, if you support Griff, if you support Chuck or Flavor, you have, this is some problem in the community, because people live this kind of things, like very personal. Things happen with Winnie Mandela and Nelson Mandela. I remember at that time it was the same discussion between the two kind of political messages, because Griff was seeing public enemy. He still seeing public enemy as revolutionary tools, like platform, political platform, and Flavor in Chuck, and you have the other one. We forget him, Terminator X.
Mm-hmm.
You remember Terminator X, the DJ?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, Terminator X. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is Terminator X.
Right.
Well, go ahead.
Their production was cutting edge though too.
Right.
It was different from anybody else's production at that time. They even had an impact on the art form itself. And if you think about it, remember Ice Cube is, starts off with NWA, but when he's gonna make his break, he goes to deal with Public Enemy's production team, right?
Yes.
Decide to make his break, and then Ice Cube becomes a little bit more radical and politicized too. Because I think you do on one element you have, and as we said, Public Enemy started with the street. And then they took the street and added a more radical element. I think there's a difference there, and I think our people recognize that too. I remember I was teaching high school at that time, and I was discussing it with one of my students who at that time he was, he'd always be asleep during class because he'd be in the trap at nighttime, right? He was out there slinging, and he wasn't really slinging. He was providing protection for the people who were slinging. And the song Black Steel in Our Chaos, he said to me,
yes.
He said, Umoja. Because there's a line in there which says, I forgot the whole thing, but he said, I'm fucking up the government. And he said, Umoja, that's going a little too far. Now, this is a brother who's engaged in the streets every night. But for you to say you fucking up the government, oh hell no! I ain't willing to go there with them. So there is a different. A lot of folks could relate to the elements, not necessarily the revolutionary lyrics. It wasn't just the fact they said the F word; it was the fact they would, the government was the target. So I think Public Enemy also injected that revolution into the piece, and again, masses were conscious of it. But I really think, and this is something I learned from Dr. Mutulu Shakur when I did had the opportunity to go into the camps of prisons and do some teaching. Also, he said, well, sometimes it's just the role of the artist to put some things out. They might not articulate it like we might. When I say we, I'm talking about people who are activists, organizers, But he said, but it's our job, the fact that they said it, to use that to educate more people. And I think that's what Kalonji is saying early on. A lot of times we get into, did they say it right? Did it, but how can I use this to organize more youth? How can I use this to get more people involved in the struggle? And I think that's what part of our challenge is just to look at the heart of our people. Look what do is, sometimes there is stuff that is counter-revolutionary we got to call out.
Right.
But at the same time, what is out there that can help our people rise to a whole different level of thinking and engagement for our own liberation? And I think that's what Public Enemy definitely introduced that and took us to a different level in terms of hip hop, along with other people. KRS-One, we can't forget, and Boogie Down Productions. I mentioned before X-Clan and the Black Watch movement, because like Kalonji was saying, I think of Dead Prez in this context too. They were artists, but they were also engaged in the streets with folk.
That's right.
And so I think that even produces a whole different level of at least content. But Public Enemy definitely had the content and the production that was cutting edge. It was different and had a major impact on the industry. Even R&B people were born from their production during that time.
No doubt.
Yeah. So also artists, going back with what you were saying, Baba AK, back in the day, we talked earlier about James Brown. Okay, James Brown might not have been the most revolutionary conscious person, but just coming out with that song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. I mean, the revolutionaries took that, the cultural nationalists, the revolutionary nationalists, you name it, just took it and ran with it. And so, artists play a huge role, whether they're conscious or not. I mean, y'all know I'm old school. I'm old, y'all, and there's an artist, Nas. Okay, Nas, in one of his songs, mentioned one of my clients, who I was trying to get out on compassion release, who wasn't a revolutionary or anything like that, but by the fact that he mentioned his name, William Underwood, I think it was, and I was able to ride that and be able to help uplift that name, and he got out last year. So I mean, it meant Common coming up with Asada. I mean, now Asada's name has just been out there, and ABC 1, 2, 3, etc. But it helps to solidify the icons in our movement, okay, that have been swept under the rug, like that. So Tupac, y'all, okay, you talk about Tupac then. I mean, I'm just saying, we're trying to get Matulu out now. We've been trying to get him out for decades, but this last effort, because he's been slated with mere months to live, to come out on compassion release. Okay, yeah, I got a microphone now, so I said, yeah, that's Tupac's stepfather. So for those who don't know, it causes them to listen a little bit clearer. I mentioned that when I go to the White House, to the Department of Justice, before the parole board, in front of the parole, the pardon attorney, because they've heard of Tupac and said, oh, this is a stepfather too. Okay, let me listen a little bit further, So anyway, the art, the artist, the culture.
So that's something. One of the things Sister Nkechi said about the question of groups. In that time, hip hop was a group. Now it's only one guy who play, to sing, to DJ, to do everything. But the time of the groups, like the Roots, but like Public Enemy, that was traditionally coming in the black music in 70s and in 60s, that there was a group like the Temptation, like the Platters, But when like Fela Kuti, it was like 20 people playing in the show. But this individualistic vision of hip hop is only one guy. That is representative. Was about what Kalonji said, that the capitalist system want to figure out the music and culture in terms of control the community in that aspect. Because I remember when we started make hip hop, it was a groups. You have a DJ, You have 3 or 4 people more. But now it's just one guy doing everything. So what do you think about this situation of the change of this reality and hip hop and in the context of Public Enemy? I remember that Sister Soldier was member of the Public Enemy. Somebody know that?
Yes.
At the beginning. And Harry Allen was member too. And I think Sister Soldier has one song that the President of the United States decided to replace slavery. Wow, I don't remember that. I remember that song that time. And we will see this kind of clip, but we didn't understand too much going on inside the clips. But now when you see this clip, you see that those people make more to conscience people that anybody. Because this clip of Sister Soldier is this as the President of the United States with David Duke. I mean, David Duke for Ku Klux Klan, or some people like this. They decided to rebuild slavery, and all this topic went inside the hip hop, inside the Public Enemy. For example, I remember when Akinyele said that when NWA broke. You understand? So every time you have a group like NWA, like Public Enemy, but Public Enemy, quote unquote, didn't broke like other groups, you know, because then the industry bring you this guy, what he calls Cypress Hill, you know, different kind of music that a little bit are very out with the reality of the black community, because when they broke Ghetto Boys, Cypress Hill, the so-called gangster rap music, you know, and insulting black women, that was another context. That was another reality. And in fact, I think she was doing by Contemplo. That Akinyele talk about Contemplo at the beginning. Go ahead.
Well, no, I don't know if I agree. I think misogyny in the music predates hip hop.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
It predates hip hop. One of my friends, he got these album of these old blues songs, and they say some stuff on there, anti-female stuff, that's worse than anything the Two Live Crew could have ever put out there. Worse than anything NWA could have ever put out there.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the streets listening to I don't know if your audience knows this, Rudy Ray Moore.
Absolutely.
It wasn't necessarily music, but they would have somebody playing behind them. And my friends, when I was growing up, we would memorize that stuff. You know, it did. Unfortunately, around the same time, The Last Poets came out and challenged it. It was a whole different type of stuff, but it predates hip hop, and I think it just arises. Now, I will say this: when I mentioned that there was an assault on the music, and there's a period of time in Tupac, and when you mentioned Ice-T and the song "Cop Killer," there was a whole, and you mentioned Sister Soldier. There's a whole period where there's like this assault on conscious hip hop or resistance oriented hip hop. And so it's almost like communicated that it's all right to talk about misogyny. It's all right to talk about slinging drugs. You can do that and we ain't gonna say nothing. But you say something against the police, your album is not gonna come out.
Forget about it.
Yes.
It ain't gonna come out. We're gonna hold it up in production. Tupac, I think his second album, it was held up and he had to change the name, everything, you know what I mean, before the album came out. And so I think the industry made a particular decision and went a particular way. I think, and you know, I know a lot of black people love Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was a part of that assault because he went after Sister Soldier, who I think she said in response to the rebellion around Rodney King, she said 2 wrongs don't make a right, but it damn sure make it even. You know what I mean? And so, but you know, so
this is my woman.
Yeah, so you know, it was this whole assault against radical hip hop. And then went along what happened on the street, even a period earlier, you know, when there's a raid on the Black Panther Party, 41st and Central, right? And at the same time that happens, is to me, it kind of communicates to our youth in California in particular, don't talk about being no revolutionary. It's all right for y'all to shoot each other.
That's right.
But, you know, we allow you to do that. But if you talk about revolution, we're gonna put your movement down. We're gonna bring tanks. You know what I mean? They created SWAT, and that was the SWAT's first action, 41st and Central.
That's right.
So I think all those things are communicated, and I think that allowed a certain type of music to be more popular and other type of music to be suppressed.
But I will say today, there's not just hip hop, but there's just a lot of negativity dealing with against black women, not just by black men, with the sisters ourselves. And it's just, I don't know, it's a little difficult for an old school person to listen to some of the stuff that's out there today. I'm sorry, it just really is.
Well, I think the difference is the period of time I'm talking about, it's more underground. Like Rudy Ray Moore won't play it on the radio.
Yeah. Clarence C.C. Carter.
Our parents are playing it in the house, though.
I remember C.C. Carter. Yes.
And my grandfather, you know, I would my grandfather be in the basement with his crew, and they have all kinds of the blues. I mean, some of the stuff that was being spit out was off the chain. You know what I'm saying? Millie Jackson was sort of like a Lil' Kim before Lil' Kim. You know what I'm saying? And we talk about today's music as if it hasn't always existed. I agree with you that it is definitely a little more over the top, you know, but you know, we've been kind of wild going back to Mom's Mabley. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's been we've been off the chain for a minute. But I wanted to say also, because I used to listen to those Rudy Ray Moore records as well. I used to sneak and listen to him. I think it was him that did The Judge, about giving himself a certain amount of time.
Pig McMarkle.
Yeah, Pig McMarkle. Okay, word. Yeah. All that. I'm gonna
now,
get
how I know that? I don't know.
I don't know either. But I think what we have to do though, man, you know, in organizing as a whole, and especially using hip hop as a tool, we have to be able to tap into the minds of the masses, and we got to understand the climate as well, because that is one of the spots that we fell. I was on a panel recently with this brother, and I said whatever I said, and he got on after me. He said, "See, now when I was your age, blase blah, this, that, whatever, so on and so forth." Now I heard the brother say he just turned 50 a few minutes before. So I asked him, I said, "Well, when were you my age?" He said, "What you mean, when was I your age, young brother?" I said, "Well, I'll be 52 in December. So you said you 50. I'm trying to figure out." But the arrogance struck him because he automatically assumed that I was younger than him. You know what I'm saying? So instantaneously, it became a divisive type situation. You know what I'm saying? So we got to figure out, where do we find that common ground? Where can we use hip hop as a tool? Truth is, me, like many of you, we pretty much know all the so-called quote unquote conscious rappers out here, right? But in my situation, when it comes to material support, it's been folks who have been trap rappers. You understand what I'm saying? It's been folks that, I mean, cats complain about Killer Mike. I hear him bombing on them all the time. But
yes, Killer Mike.
They may bomb on him, but he plays the Nipsey Russell move. He'll slide some, not hustle, Nipsey Russell, where he slide a little bit of bread, courtesy of, you know what I'm saying, without having to be vocal. Now, I don't agree all with his politics, so on and so forth. He understands where I'm coming from. I understand where he comes from. But the reality is, the unseen hand is sometimes more important than the seen hand. You understand what I'm saying? Because
he talks operations too.
Absolutely. So you know, we have to be able to meet our people where they at. One thing that Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael used to talk about was we give them a chance, and they mess up again, then we give them one more chance because they are people. They mess up again, give them another chance because they are people, and then we're gonna off them. Now, I'm not saying keep up with the mess ups. I'd be lying. You might get one chance, depending on how.
But what the Akinyele in Kalonji say, it should be true. But I think the same thing happened with the salsa music. After 1960s, we didn't have so many